Yeah, why do we have icons in the Orthodox Church? Why do we value iconography so much? Well, the short answer, and really the last word, ought to be because God became man. The second person of the Trinity, the Logos, Christ, the Son, became a human, a person. And he walked around on the earth and he took on all of humanity. He was touchable, he was visible. You could see him. If you stood close enough to him, you could smell him. If you had a camera, you could take his picture. And so just at a very minimum, like he can be depicted. Some people may say, well, aren't you making an idol? Didn't the Lord say not to make graven images? And I have a hard time seeing how these things are graven or how they could be qualify as idol worship. Our worship is a very specific thing that involves the offering of a sacrifice on an altar. We don't do that for icons. Instead, we have these icons, these images of other people like ourselves who were created in the image and likeness of God. This is the word icon. In the image and likeness of God is the icon of God. So people, like, set aside the icons for a moment and just consider humans. Humans are icons of God. And if we can't have icons in the churches, then we can't have any other kinds of icons. The icons we have in our churches ought to convey the same divinity that a human person would convey to us. But we have a really hard time of thinking of people in that way. We tend to think that people are some kind of fallen or less than or tainted or bad, dirty, to be rejected. How could we equate people with God? But this is the feast. This is what Christmas is. God become man. This is why Christmas is such a joyous feast. This is why we celebrate the Nativity with such intensity in the Orthodox Church, because God became man. And that says so much about who God is and so much about who humans are, the value that people hold with God. And so we can depict these people because we can depict God himself, that is Christ. So when we look around our church and we have all this wonderful iconography of all these different humans, what we're seeing is, as St. Paul said, it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. So what St. Paul meant was, when you see St. Paul, even though he's still St. Paul, distinct from Peter and distinct from you and me, we ought to see Christ. Paul ought to communicate Christ to us. And if we can depict Christ, then we can depict Paul. We can depict Father Jesse. If God wills for me to be a saint, we can depict you in iconography. We don't depict these saints, Saint Maria or Saint Elizabeth, because they were the source of some unique type of power or divinity. That's polytheism. That's almost akin to demon worship. We would never do that. We're depicting them. That's why they have a halo, because of the Christ that they showed to other people. That's one reason. We also have icons because in our prayer and in Orthodox worship, at least in a church and even at home, we're entering into a spiritual reality that is going on all the time. And that is the spiritual reality of the counsel of God, the eternal worship of the Lord around his throne. And so when you step into an Orthodox church, you're stepping into that reality. And so we call these people saints. We call them holy. We call them above the earthly, because they're standing around the throne of God, beseeching him and worshiping him. And we enter into the church to join in that. And so from an outsider, you're going to see me and other people standing in the church, surrounded by, St. Paul said, this great cloud of witnesses, because that's what's going on in the kingdom anyway. So we do this because we're called to participate in that with our whole being. It's not just a mental contemplation where we sit at home and maybe watch a video of a worship service online, or sit quietly and think spiritual things with our mind. we're also called to participate with our whole being. So with our eyes, we see these icons, and with our bodies, it feels like I'm surrounded by other members of my church family, even though I'm one of the only people in the room right now. And this is a real participation. So when I look at these icons, I should be drawn into something deeper. I shouldn't just see St. Mary of Egypt, though there's something great to be gained from seeing St. Mary of Egypt, but it should draw me into something greater.